Today, I'm talking to Kate about her experience with step-parenting a teenager. That's coming up on this episode number 1 of the Stepmom Club. Hi, and welcome to the Stepmom Club Podcast, a positive podcast for stepmoms to build bridges, normalize step-parenting, and for women who need to know someone just gets it. I'm your host, Grady Savage, and you can find me online at gradybirdblog.com and on pretty much all social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as the username GradyBirdBlog. So I am very excited to bring an interview with Kate today. She is a stepmom with a teenage stepdaughter, and she's going to chat with us a little bit about her experience with step-parenting a teenager and kind of some specific difficulties that might come with that type of living situation. So I'm really excited to get to it. So without further ado, here is my interview with Kate. Hey, Kate. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Grady. I'm really excited to talk to you about step-parenting. Just a little bit of background about me. I live in the western suburbs of Chicago and work in downtown Chicago. I'm married to my husband, Rick, and he has one daughter, Sofia, who's 15. Rick and I have been together since Sofia was 7, and we got married 4.5 years ago. I currently work for a network of high schools. I manage the student information system, so it's pretty much a desk computery job where I sit around and answer people's questions. Currently, I'm the one working in our household, and Rick kind of does the household stuff like cooking and cleaning and laundry and all that excellent stuff that needs to get done around the house. So, yeah. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with some questions that some readers have asked, and we're just going to go. Okay, so was Rick having Sofia a pro or a con when you guys were talking about dating and, you know, getting more serious and all that sort of thing?
Well, at the time of my life when I started dating Rick, I was pretty young. I was only 21, actually, and I was dating Rick more as kind of a crazy end-of-college fling than any kind of situation where I believed that we were going to get married at the end.
Okay.
And so it wasn't a pro or a con, it just kind of was. And Sofia and I met pretty early on, with me as a friend, not defined as the girlfriend. And if I ever did stay overnight, I would stay in the guest room. And it wasn't really a consideration. And then by the time that we got to the point where we were serious, Sofia was just kind of there. Like, she was part of his life, she was part of my life. Like, obviously she was part of his life, but she became part of my life. And so it wasn't a negative, and it wasn't a pro, I'll be really honest, but it also wasn't something where I thought, oh my God, this is like the end of the world and I can't do it. So that was kind of where my thinking was there, and that's and like I said, mainly because when we started getting together, like, I wasn't intending to be with Rick in the long term, and so it was kind of a way to ease myself into that relationship with Sofia and not have it be super serious right away or really intimidating, and it was a way to kind of like make it more relaxed to start out with, and then get more serious as time went on.
Right. No, totally. So you were so did you meet her when you were 21?
Yes.
Wow. So how did you handle, and how do you still handle, having a child in your life and taking care of them and all of that, that you didn't, have a choice in the matter as far as bringing them into the world? How does that, especially at 21, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was one of those things that was very surprising for all my friends. Here we're all getting ready to graduate college, finding our first jobs with health insurance. And, I turn around and tell them, hey, guess what? I'm dating this guy. He's way older than me and has a kid. And they were all, is that really the best decision? Really? And so it's a little difficult at times, because definitely at 21 isn't a time where you think you're going to form a relationship with a 7-year-old, especially one who you might end up parenting at some point. And so it's been kind of a crazy journey, and definitely a situation in which I've felt, there have been moments when I felt very alone, because none of my friends have kids yet or had kids yet when we were that young, and also because I've had a hard time finding the stepmom community. And I've been able to find a community online, which was something that I looked for originally. I looked for in person, and that just didn't kind of materialize, unfortunately.
Totally. No, totally. And I can really, really relate to having all of your friends be in a completely different place. I was 23 when I met Jess, and she was 7 also. And it was definitely a thing where, like, my friends are awesome. They're happy to talk to me about whatever, but there's only so much of, like, but you guys just can't. They can't understand. I don't expect them to, but it's definitely like I'm in such a different situation than anyone around me.
Right.
And it's an adjustment. It's certainly still, but at least, at this point it's so normal to them, but it's still definitely like, okay, don't forget I have a kid at home, so like I need to adjust my plans or, whatever.
Well, and it's also something where, you kind of look for a role model, at least I think in any situation, at work or like at school, you kind of look for a role model or somebody like you want to be like. And I've had friends and friends of my parents that kind of like I've used as role models throughout my life to say, like, when I grow up, quote unquote, right? Because I'm almost 30, so really I should be kind of grown up. But when I grow up, like, I want to be like, XYZ person, and there are no role models when you're 21 and dating a guy who has a 7-year-old. Like, right. It just doesn't exist. And so it's really hard to be like, okay, I'm forging my own path here, and I get to decide what's what, but also, oh my God, I have to decide what's what.
Right. Absolutely. That's part of why I started writing to begin with we weren't married when I started writing. I just was like, my boyfriend has a kid. I have to write about this because I can't find it anywhere. And so, like, all right, I guess I'm just going to try to do this, and maybe it'll go, like, be helpful to someone, because I was like lost in the wilderness when we just started.
Yeah, it's definitely a little rough. To say the least.
Okay, so did you guys find it hard to bond, or do you find it hard to bond? Sorry, I forgot to ask this. What is your situation as far as time that Sofia is with you guys? And does that affect how well you guys can bond?
Well, so we have Sofia 50% of the time. She's with us on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then every other weekend, so Friday through basically Monday morning.
Okay.
And holidays are split up, and birthday every other year, Christmas every other year, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I would say that it's a really nice situation, because I know I can always make plans on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I don't have to worry about, coming home, family dinner, any of that stuff.
Right.
But I would say definitely in the beginning it was hard to bond, because first of all, when I started dating Rick, we didn't live together. And I lived in the city and he lived in the suburbs, and I was having this completely impossible dream of, living in the city and being a city girl and working and commuting and blah, 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 whatever. And that obviously wasn't going to work if I was going to end up with Rick in the long term, because he needs to be close to Sofia's mom. And so when I was living in the city and they were in the suburbs, I didn't always go out there as much when Sofia was around, because my goal was to spend time with Rick. And
Right.
It's harder to do when Sofia's around, obviously. And, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we were dating. So that was that. And there were definitely times then, and when we got to the point where I moved in and it started getting serious and everything, there were definitely times where Rick kind of pushed off some things, because he's like, well, you're a woman.
Oh, no.
And, it would be really great if you could, And I'm like, no, absolutely not. This is not a thing. I'm not, nope, hard stop. And yet, so one of my early stories with Sofia one of my earliest memories, well, first there was this one time we went to the zoo and that was lovely. But then one of the earlier memories I have of that illustrates our difficulty in bonding was Sofia was in her bedroom and there was a little set of drawers outside her bedroom, because it was right across from the bathroom. And so the drawers had bathroom stuff in them, because the bathroom was kind of small, and so we had these drawers. And Sofia was maybe 11 at the time, and Rick wanted me to let her know where the woman products were,
Okay. Yep.
case, because she was 11, and who knows, right? These days,
Right.
kids get their period so early. And so I knocked on her door, and she's like, oh, hey. And I was like, so, your dad, so there's some stuff in this drawer, and I opened it up and showed it to her, and I was like, so you can totally use anything you need or want or whatever, but if you use the last of something, can you just let me know, because then I can buy more, that'd be really cool, whatever. And she's giving me this look like I've grown another head, because I'm acting like an idiot, because I was not equipped for that conversation, and of course she's not in any place to have this conversation, because she's 11. And so we're sitting here, and I was like, okay, and also do you have any questions? And she's like, no, and gives me this horrified look and shuts the door.
Oh.
And so that was that. And now, yeah. So it's pretty much gone on the upside. It really can't get worse than that. In terms of awkwardness, at least. I'm sure there are step parents who are like, oh my God, it can totally get worse. It can totally get worse. But on the upside, in terms of mine and Sophia's relationship, it has not gotten worse. But we've since then had a few other awkward conversations where Rick will ask me to do something because I have experience with it, or because I'm a woman, or because of this or that or the other thing. And so I have a 30-second conversation with Sofia in which I basically am like, well, so your dad, he asked me to do this thing, and we're going to talk about this thing, and then I promise we won't ever talk about it again. If you want to. I won't ever make you talk about it again. And so we've had a few of those. And honestly, I think that there have been times where bonding would be easier if she was with us more, and that's kind of one of the things where I think about that, because 50% of the time is a significant period of time, but it also isn't all the time, and so it's really easy to detach, and a lot of the times I've done that just purely because Rick and Sofia have interests that I have zero interest in, and so that's made it kind of difficult. And we also haven't been as conscientious or good about planning family activities or doing things as a family, and we'll do things. It just generally is spontaneous and less like purposeful. And I think that that's one thing that if you're looking kind of to bond with your stepkid, like I think that's something that's really important, is kind of being more purposeful about saying, okay, yes, we're going to do this thing, like we're going to go see a movie together and we're going to do it on Thursday, and that's going to be a family activity, or we're going to make sure that we eat dinner together every Wednesday night regardless of who's doing what or whatever. And I think that that's really important, and it just kind of has gone by the wayside. And at this point, I'm of the opinion, like, I've been in Sofia's life for like 8 years. Like, if we haven't bonded, we're not bonding. This is it, pretty much. And so that's where I am personally. But I definitely think it could have been different had we done different things when early on. But at this point, it's just kind of, I'm of the opinion, like I said, that we're where we're at, and we're both comfortable with that, and so that's that.
Sure. No, totally. Do you feel like it's different, or that you bonded in different ways, or not bonded in different ways, I guess, because she's a teenager? Like, because she's like a teenager. Like, Jess is 12, she's like almost 13, but Sophia's like a straight up teen. Yeah. And because teenagers are their own humans to begin with.
They are. Oh, and Sophia's always been her own person. She has strong opinions, and she does not hesitate to share them, and that's great. And we totally encourage that, because obviously that's what you want in a person. And honestly, all things considered, Sophia's the best teenager I know. And because I literally have said to my therapist, it's not fair I can't complain about her, because there's nothing to complain about.
She's that good.
She's like that good. Like, I can recall 2 incidents where she was snotty, and she's been a teenager for 3 years, so that's pretty good. I mean, even 50% of the time, so we'll say like 1.5 year, 2 times in 1.5 years that she's been snotty towards me, and it could be that I'm just not as around as Rick is, but Rick also thinks she's a good kid, given he's her dad, so he kind of has to. But I trust his opinion and judgment. So yeah, like one time I was downstairs and we were all watching TV or something, and I made some comment about how I didn't want to watch whatever it was that we were watching at the moment. She's like, well, you have your own TV. You could go watch your own TV.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, snap. And then there was a conversation with Rick about that later.
Yep. Hey, it's good. Having a good teenager. I think, fingers crossed for that one for me. She's a great kid for sure. So we shall see.
Yeah. You never know, right? It's just one of those things. Like, when I was a kid, and my sister, my sister's 3 years younger than me, when I turned, and when she turned 13, I swear it was the minute she turned 13, it was hell on earth for everybody in the house. And I asked my mother, I was like, oh my God, like, this is terrible. I can't believe that she acts like this. And I asked her, I said, you know, was I like this? And my mom was like, oh, honey, you still are. And I was like, okay, so then. So I know I was not a lovely teenager to deal with, so I don't know what I did in life to deserve such a great kid. So, like, whatever it is, I must have done something really great at some point.
Whatever it is, thank goodness that I did it.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, so if Sofia is doing the 2 times that she did something wrong, how do you guys handle discipline with her? Is that something just Rick does? Do you participate? What happens if he's not home? How does that work for you guys?
Well, so the first part to know about this is that Rick and I have very different opinions about parenting. So and mine generally tend towards the we should be back in the 50s, and you should never watch TV, and you should always eat all your vegetables for dinner. And his tend towards the more, yeah, sure, let's dye your hair yellow. That's not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. Kate, do you have a problem with that? I'm like, yeah, no, kind of do have a problem with that. Because, like, I don't think people should dye their hair yellow. Oh, no, it's no big deal. Like, might as well get it out of the way now. Better now than, like, you know, in your 20s. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. We'll just do that. So if there is an issue, so usually Rick sets the standard because he is Sofia's dad. And if there is an issue with something, then I will bring it up later with Rick, and then he'll talk to Sofia about it. Okay. If there was if we were home alone and she was doing something that I knew she shouldn't be doing, which again has happened so infrequently, if at all, I would address it and I would say, hey, you know, like, can you please stop doing whatever it is that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing? But for the most part, there really isn't a problem. And usually the issues that we come up with aren't even like discipline issues, but more like what's allowed and what's not allowed. And for example, I feel very strongly about Sofia seeing R-rated movies. I feel strongly that she should not see R-rated movies or like mature rated TV shows, whatever, right? And Rick doesn't care. And so that was one of those situations where I had to pull him aside and was like, look, I feel really strongly about this, and it's something that I care about, and it would make me uncomfortable if, you know, you guys are watching R-rated movies and who knows what's on the screen, you know, whatever. And the compromise we came to was that if Rick has seen the movie or the TV show, and he deems it appropriate, then Sofia can watch it. But otherwise, she doesn't watch R-rated movies or mature, like, M TV shows or whatever they are.
Yep.
Basically nothing on HBO because, there's, like, people having sex all the time, and I don't want to watch that with my stepkid.
Right. No, I think I am much closer to your 50s way of thinking than not. I think it's a similar situation in our house where Chris is a lot more lenient about things than I am, for sure. And for us, it was definitely a lot of, you know, not while Jess was there, but it's like what you said with rules. It was a lot of like, how do we figure out the rules? Because you're feeling like pretty okay about it, and I'm like, listen, we need to get some boundaries put in place here. So definitely the conversations of like, okay, Jess is in bed, now we can talk about this. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of that for us, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so earlier you had mentioned that Rick does a lot of the home stuff and that you work outside the home. So how does that, if it's okay to ask, how does that affect things as far as the money stuff with Sofia?
Well, it can get a little complicated at times, but basically the bottom line is if Sofia needs it, she's going to get it. I'm not going to say, no, you can't buy a winter coat, despite the fact that winter coats have gotten like far more expensive for kids than I ever remember them being. Even that my mother bought, well, it's entirely possible my mother was just the cheapo, because I do remember wearing the same winter coat for like 4 years because she bought it 3 sizes too big.
She's just resourceful.
Right. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was pine green. It was wonderful. But so I generally have sticker shock about everything because I'm like, oh my God, raising a kid is really expensive. But at the same time, it's like, well, you need it. So, and on occasion, Sofia's grandparents chip in for certain things like school fees because of other situations, and that make that difficult, landmine-filled issues. And then for the most part, when it comes to kind of discretionary spending, like fun stuff, usually I'm the one buying presents anyways. Like, I would be doing that regardless of whose money it was, because Rick is kind of like, la, 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 la. Oh, it's Christmas? Okay. No, he's better than that. But I also make a spreadsheet in September and start buying things then. So
yes, preach.
So I'm a little more organized. So then in that case, I don't even have to like discuss it with him. I'll just be like, hey, will Sophia like XYZ thing that I've picked out on the internet for her? And if I see things like that aren't around a holiday too, I'll just get her, because it's fun to get people things. So yeah, that's generally what happens. We don't talk about it much. It's just more me going, oh my God, it cost how much to do what? But it's not something I'm going to argue with either, because,
right.
It's a kid and she needs it. So we did get out of the braces though. That was good.
Oh man, braces. Braces.
Like, no, you don't need to get her braces. And I was like, hallelujah.
Ooh, yes, we are handling braces right now. So it's for sure something, but yes, there are certain things you're like, she needs it. We're gonna make it happen, and there it is. Okay, so as far as more of since you guys are 50-50, as far as more of the school stuff for her, as far as like conferences, classes, I don't know if she does activities where there's concerts and that sort of thing. Are you kind of a part of that experience with her? Or is that something where you step back a little bit more?
So I sat through far too many elementary school recorder concerts than I really care to recall, because honestly, like, those are kind of the worst things ever. First of all, that's a situation where I was like, I did not birth this child. I should not have to sit through this.
Recorder concerts, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, because, like, for real. But since then, I have attended a few parent-teacher conferences, but Rick is far more involved with everything, obviously, because he needs to be, and he will on occasion ask my opinion, and I will definitely give my opinion if I feel it's warranted. Right now, she's doing golf, and that has about the shortest season in the history of sports. When you're like in high school, it's literally a month and a half. And she hasn't actually participated in any meets yet. Like, I don't know if that's what you call it, a meet. I don't even know.
I don't know. I don't know golf literally at all.
So I don't know. So there haven't been any situations where I would even go watch her play golf, because she hasn't done anything outside of practice yet. So I believe at some point I would be involved if she wanted, but that we haven't reached that point yet.
Got it. Okay, so this is a very popular question, so I'm excited to hear your answer. What do you say when people ask you if you have kids?
Well, first of all, it depends on who's asking. So if it's a health professional, I will say no, but I have a stepdaughter, because usually they're asking because they care about whether or not you've actually physically had a baby.
Yes.
But if it's somebody else, I'm usually the most awkward person in the history of the universe, and I'll go, well, so Rick has a daughter, so I get kind of, like, maybe. And I've gotten a lot of funny looks. Also because I generally make it known that I'm not the biggest fan of kids. I'm not. I just don't really like them. As a general rule, not like on an individual basis. On an individual basis, there are plenty of kids I like my friends' kids and my cousins' kids and kids that I am related to by blood. Definitely. But so
you're not like a kid person,
right?
Like, I'm like a kid person. Like, yes. I've taught small children my whole life. People see me and they associate that, but that's not what people associate you with.
Right. And so I've actually had people be like, oh, why do you work at a school if you don't like kids so much? And I'm like, first of all, those two things are not related. Second of all, like, really? Did you really just ask me that question? But also then there are people who've been very surprised when I'm like, yeah, so I have a stepkid. And I also really hate calling myself a stepmom. So when somebody asks that question, it's really hard because I'm literally like trying to answer the question in any way possible that they are not going to follow up with, oh, so you're a stepmom, because I hate that term. It makes me feel old. I realize this is not very rational. But like, yes, I am a stepmom. So there's that. So I can't be like, no, I'm not a stepmom. Like,
so that's really interesting. So do you use a different term, or do you just not use any term?
I just don't use any term.
Because I don't love the term stepmom, to be honest, but I use it on purpose because I hate that it has this negative connotation, and I have, like, it's a one-woman mission to make it not a negative connotation. So I use it a lot. Like, in fact, if people try to use a different term, which your family, your choice, so I don't care if other people use different terms, but,
yeah,
like, I don't care for bonus mom or whatever other version, because to me, I'm like, the accurate answer, like, is stepmom. That is what it is.
Right, exactly.
And I don't like that people have a negative connotation, so maybe, like, if I'm awesome and I use the term, they'll stop having a negative connotation. But it's very interesting because the terminology definitely has a ton of weight, regardless of whatever the reason is. It's its own thing for sure. So that's interesting that you don't like to use it.
Well, and part of the thing is too is that, people, you talk around the water cooler at work, right? Like, people talk at work, and people talk about their kids. And so Sofia comes up because this is my way of bonding with my coworkers, apparently. And sometimes I'll tell stories, and they're like, oh, that sounds really like evil stepmom of you. And I'm like,
don't
head exploding. It is a really weighted term, and like, it's so hard for people, because if I tell a story that is maybe something I do that, for example, my mother did when I was a kid, but people look at me and they're like, oh, well, but you're her stepmom, and like, should you really be like doing that thing or whatever? And I can't think of a good example right now, or I would give you one, but I'm like, this is such a double standard here. What,
Oh,
what is
absolutely.
this?
I know exactly what you mean. Where you're like, or if you I've certainly, when Jess was really little and she was struggling to sleep well and all sorts of things, and I could talk to almost no one about it, because if you talk about it and you're like, my stepkid is doing this thing that I find really frustrating, people are like, yikes, you shouldn't say that, or, whatever, you're lucky to have them, or some iteration of like, you're being terrible, or it's like, no, you're allowed to like have an emotion about a situation and it not make you a bad person. Like, wasn't saying it to Jess, I was saying it to another adult.
Right.
And I just think that's so prevalent. I don't know if you've ever come across this, but I've had the sort of opposite as far as terminology happen, where I'll say I have a stepdaughter, and I know people hear me, but then they just start referring to me as her mom or something like that, and I don't necessarily know how to handle it. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but because I don't want to correct in a, like, I'm not upset that they're calling me that.
Right.
It's just not accurate. Like, so I want to correct it, because I'm like, that's not the situation, but I don't want it to sound like I'm like, don't say that because I'm her stepmom, like, in a weird way. It's just like, she has a mom who is her mom, and I am not that person. I am her stepmom. That is the fact. It's very strange.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. I don't think that's ever happened with me.
It's strange. I think they just don't know. I think it's just a social thing, which is crazy, because there are so many step families, but people still assume everyone is in a nuclear family.
Yes.
And so they just don't know what to call. I think they're trying not to be insulting by saying stepmom, but I'm like, it's not insulting. It is what it is.
Right.
Like, in fact, it's weird. I don't know how to handle it now that you're not using the right words, but here we are.
Yeah.
We sort of already talked about this last question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway.
Okay, cool.
So, obviously, Sofia is an older stepkid, and you talked earlier about how when this all sort of first started, none of your friends, they were all really starting out in the world, and you were like, okay, I have a stepkid now. What is it like now that she's a teenager and you're at a place where people are probably starting to have their own biological kids? And is that, how do you deal with that? What's that like?
Well, it's definitely really different. I personally don't want any kids. Personally. So people take that, and going back to the previous question, actually, like, people take that and they're like, oh, but you have a stepkid. Well, that's like the same thing as having a kid. And I'm like, well, it's not really. I mean, like, it kind of is, but like at the same time it's not. And like, also it's different because I met Sofia when she was 7 and didn't have a choice. But I definitely, like, I feel the feelings like that when I have a friend tell me that they're pregnant, it definitely makes me a little not like nostalgic or, like wishful that, I could have had that experience with a baby. But I also don't want it, and I know that about myself. So at the same time, it's like, well, there's clearly this biological impulse to have a baby. And every time one of my friends is like, oh my God, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby, this is so great. And I'm really happy for them, and that's spectacular. I also have to be like, nope. 2.5 years, and we are empty nesters, and we're going to travel the world, and it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to be like an empty nester at 33, and it will be great. And all my friends think I'm completely crazy for saying that, and I'm like, no, but that's actually the literal truth. Like, we will not have a kid in the house anymore, and that is what people call people who don't have a kid in the house anymore. And so if I have to put up with stepmom, I get to call myself an empty nester. Y'all can get that.
Right, that's right. Absolutely.
So, it's definitely different, and it's so funny because I missed the first 7 years of Sofia's life, I have zero knowledge of babies. Like, absolutely none. So every single time one of my friends gets pregnant, I have to ask again because I forget in between. I've had like 4 friends be pregnant at this point. It's not an insignificant number. And every single time I have to ask, so how long do you have to wait before you can find out if it's a boy or a girl? Wait, are you going to find out if it's a boy or a girl? Oh my God, I shouldn't have, oh my God, I'm sorry. Every single time. And so the thing is I have, on one hand, I have this wealth of knowledge about having a kid in the house, but on the other hand, I have zero knowledge of what it's like to have a baby. And so I'm basically like, check back in with me in 7 years and we can start to discuss. That's kind of that. It's this weird dichotomy of like being in a place where you have this experience, but like you don't have this experience, and wanting to be like super supportive, but also feeling like that single friend who's like never gonna have a kid or whatever, and being like, yeah, I'm just gonna be the cool aunt.
Yes.
Buy you all your board books. Really good at that. Really good at spending money on Amazon, buying all my friends' kids presents. But other than that, that's all I got.
That's so funny. It's true, though, the dichotomy of, like, I have a few friends. I don't have a ton of friends with kids, but I have a few friends with littler kids. And it is like, oh, we sort of get each other a little bit, but, like, I do still have to wait 5 more years before they're old enough that I have, like, comparable experiences.
Right.
For sure. I mean, but I used to work at a preschool, so I know a lot about little kids, but not from a, like, living with them all the time way.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you ready for this final question?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you started your step-parenting journey?
Well, to boil it down to its most basic, I would say that everybody is different, and every family is different, and everybody's step-parenting experience is going to be different, and that's just the way it is. And that is something that I found out the hard way, because when I got serious about being with Rick, and when I knew that it was something that it was looking like we were going to be getting married and spending our lives together, the first thing I did, as I approach most problems, because I'm a big dork, was buy every step-parent book on Amazon.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah. So, which is, some would say, an interesting way of dealing with problems. Some would say it's an excellent way. There's some the jury's still out on that one. But I bought them and I read them, and I came away thinking, hey, this is great. Like, I don't have a lot of the conflict that some stepfamilies have, because Sofia has basically been switching between parents since she was maybe 2 or 3 years old. She was really young when her parents separated, so there's none of that, like, oh, you broke up my household feeling towards me.
Sure.
Or none, that, and there's also, there really hasn't been any concerted effort on the part of her mother to talk bad about me, and she's also of the age where she would see through that. So a lot of that was me thinking, hey, like, this is going to be great. Not this is going to be great, but, like, this is great that I don't have these issues that some stepfamilies face. Like, maybe, I'm really lucky in that way. But at the same time, there are things that can totally surprise you and catch you blindsided, and you're like, whoa, was not expecting that to happen at all. And because I am patting myself on the back because I have this set of circumstances which I had absolutely nothing to do with in the first place, that I think is so spectacular, and then all of a sudden, something creeps around and gets you, and it's just because there's no way. You just can't prepare for every possible situation ever. And like I said, everybody is different. So that is one thing that I kind of wish I had known.
Absolutely. It's something I try to stress a lot, because it's crazy how much, obviously all families are different, and especially all step families are different, but it's also just when I see people seeking advice about things, which I love. I love talking about stuff and using other people's experiences to help you, but there's no way to know what's the right thing for your family, because what's the right thing for my family is not going to be the same as what's the right thing for your family. Our situations are super different, and so trying to assume that you can kind of place the same solution on every problem is like, oh, that's not going to work well.
Definitely.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, thank you so much for being here today and chatting with us, Kate. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a really great time.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, so that was a great conversation with Kate. I really just wanted to reiterate her last point about every stepfamily being different. As we both said in the interview, we both did a lot of reading before and kind of in the beginning of our stepmom journey, and that's really helpful. If you haven't checked out any books or articles on the subject, it's definitely worth doing your research and kind of finding out what has been other people's experiences. But it definitely is important to know that everybody's different and your experience is going to be different than anyone else's. And just to keep that in mind as you move forward with your journey is really valuable advice and very important. So I definitely am glad that Kate brought up that important subject. And there you have it, episode number 1 of the Stepmom Club Podcast. Before I headed out here, I did just want to share a listener voicemail. I do have Sam here, and she is going to share her stepmom win that she had. If you'd like to leave a voicemail with a stepmom win or a question, you can head over to speakpipe.com/stepmomclub, and you can leave your name and where you're from, and your voicemail might be featured on a future show. So, without further ado, here is Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my stepmom win is when my husband and my stepson and I were all playing around with Nerf guns, and we were shooting at targets, and we were laughing and giggling, just having a really good time. And my stepson said he really loves hanging out with us because we're so much fun, and we're always laughing, and we really enjoy each other's company. And it really just made it clear that we're a great role model for a relationship and what a partnership should be for a marriage, as well as how much we love him as well.
Thank you, Sam. That was really awesome. I love to hear about women and their stepmom wins, the little or big ways that you're making a difference in your stepkids' lives or that they're making a difference in yours. So, for more information on this show, you can visit stepmomclubpodcast.com. So feel free to check that out. And thanks for joining the club. See you next time.